Right, let's keep things rolling. It's a bit ridiculous that we had to exit our airship in order to deal with these magical statues, and that we have to do so for each set of them. Not that it makes things more dangerous somehow, just that it's a bit more inconvenient than I'd like. Ah well, we're still going to be entering the final dungeon soon. It's not like those statues being destroyed somehow triggers a boss fight. The gauntlet doesn't actually begin until we've actually entered the dungeon itself. Really wish there was something that made it feel somehow special as we destroy each set of statues. And look at that, a mountain range that only one specific airship can take us across. So we're gonna have to go back to our ship anyway. It's just such a minor way for the game to slow us down that it's hard to even get annoyed by it. Hell, I'm honestly surprised that we managed to get to the final dungeon in under 13 hours, considering I did as much of the side content as I could find. I know, this game's lack of story would make it tough to justify it becoming something along the lines of 20 to 40 hours long, but still. And here we are, the entrance to the final dungeon. Well, as first floors go, this is kinda large. You mean to tell me that the final crystal was this undefended at the entrance of the dungeon? I'm pretty sure this is the first time we've been active against us. It's honestly rather amazing that this game has had so little of an overarching threat. Wait, I could have sworn we already beat this guy earlier in the game. At the very least, we fought someone who looked incredibly similar to this guy as a boss fight before we ended up killing the two good guy sages. Granted, it wouldn't be the first nor the last time that the series would have you fight against some bosses over and over again in the final dungeon. Still, you'd think that we'd have something far more threatening guarding the final crystal to help make it seem like a big, epic event. Sorry, Titan, but you're nowhere near as much trouble to deal with as Leviathan, Odin, or Bahamut. You're just a speed bump. And since we're not in any actual hurry, it doesn't actually matter that you are a speed bump. All that matters is that I'm not really feeling all that worried as we kick your ass. Maybe I didn't need to use a healing spell that was quite so effective considering the amount of damage we needed to fix there. It's not like I've got any clue how much punishment this guy can take. All I know is that getting to the other crystals felt like genuine accomplishments to help measure how far into the game we were. Getting to the first one was a good way to show that our adventure was just getting started. The second and third crystals were each preceded by some interesting moments where a companion who came with us for a while ended up getting killed, which gave it a bit more impact. Not that we knew each of those too long, especially not the poor girl who helped us get to the water crystal. Still, really feels underwhelming how we finally are getting to the fourth crystal. In fact, it's possible for some players to just not interact with this crystal at all as they enter this dungeon. Granted, the placement of the damn door makes it unlikely that they'd skip over it altogether, but it's not as much of a way to bar our progress as the others. Should I bother asking why the words cloud and darkness were capitalized there? Well, since the evoker job didn't do much for me, I doubt that I'm gonna do anything with the explicit summoner class here. Still, the devout looks like it's gonna be an upgrade for the white mage, and the magus looks like it's gonna be an upgrade for the black mage, and the black mage really desperately needed an upgrade at this point. Hopefully I'm not wrong about that, but hey, those two classes have been with us since the absolute start, so... As a side note, is there a particular reason that a class that's known as the Devout has cat ears on it? I mean, sure, it's very distinctive from the White Mage, but I don't generally associate cats with healing. They're more like little chaos bringers, so giving the Black Mage some kind of cat ears would have felt a bit more fitting to me than the White Mage upgrade. Anyway, looks like the Magus doesn't use the same gear that the Black Mage does. Apparently that would have been, too convenient, so I suppose we're gonna be pulling out just to get some better equipment. Ugh. Really, Midori? First fight in your new job and you're instantly turned into stone by a random Shimra? Sure, it's more a matter of luck than anything else, but still, not a great way to start things off for Midori there. And great. Now I'm trying to think who's had worse luck over the course of this playthrough overall, Midori or Brett. Both of them have had it pretty rough on their way to this point of the game. And we've still got a good amount of footage left to go through, despite the fact that we're starting to chip our way through the final dungeon of the game. Assuming, of course, you can call something this bare bones and barely threaded together a story, it's been a very long one. At least compared to some, other, essentially plotless stories, like, say, Doom. Again, it's a bit strange that Final Fantasy I, the absolute original game, somehow felt like it had a tighter narrative than whatever we've gotten in this one. That game did even less to give us some kind of narrative than Final Fantasy III has. It's just weird how it feels that way to me when this game definitely did try to do more in terms of storytelling than the original Final Fantasy. We've had named characters die on this one. From what I've heard, Final Fantasy II had a pretty solid story in its own right as well. Definitely better than 1 and 3, at least from the people I know who've actually played it from beginning to end. Still, I've seen enough of Final Fantasy II and 3 to feel that it's interesting that the first Final Fantasy felt like the best of the original 3. The second was an experimentation with level-up mechanics and storytelling, with the level-up mechanics and the dungeon design being an absolute pain in the ass that I could not push my way through. Meanwhile, Final Fantasy III here was absolutely brilliant with its class system and how to change your classes around at will, but unintentionally sabotaged itself by having so many boss fights and random encounters that required very specific tactics instead of letting the player really have the freedom to experiment with them however they please to figure things out. Ugh. Anyway, it looks like one of the great mages has become a random encounter just yeah, dear God. I don't think we've actually become strong enough yet to turn taking her down as a casual thing to do. Those random encounters are probably weaker than that boss fight, but dear God, it kinda says that the number of sprites available for this game just aren't enough for the encounters and boss fights we deal with here. Which is kinda odd to say considering just how many recolored enemies we saw back in the original Final Fantasy, and how many there were even in Final Fantasy IV, so why do I feel the need to bitch about it more with this game? Oh dear, 3 high potions used already. Definitely not a great sign considering just how much footage is left in the game. I'm incredibly certain that we're gonna have multiple moments of me pulling back for supplies as we keep pushing forward. I was kinda tempted to look up what Lilith's Kiss does, though I'm sure I've already read that. And I'm also just pretty sure it's another item I'm not all that likely to bother using anyway. Okay, so now we've got random encounters where someone starts summoning more monsters for us to fight against. Certainly rather strange, especially since I'm pretty used to seeing demons being summoned, not seeing demons doing the summoning. Ah well, at least the background for the battles is vaguely hell adjacent, so that's certainly interesting. Sure, the walls are kind of oddly techy, and the oddly done brick ground that has mild inclines and mild declines doesn't really make me think of hell, or at least not a very deep and torturous depth of hell. If I actually had to walk through it, I'm sure I'd be kind of annoyed by it, and it would be incredibly annoying for anybody with a wheelchair to get around, but thankfully, this is a two-dimensional video game. We don't have to worry about any kind of muscle fatigue or any of our characters tripping as they walk, so that little visual detail, I suppose, is a little unique, but ultimately meaningless. I can't think of any other time I've seen anything like that before, though. We're on the second floor, and we've already used 10 high potions, and we're not even done with the second floor. This is an absolutely massive floor that makes the previous floor look small in comparison. Well, the demon didn't get a chance to summon all that many other Iron Claws for us to deal with this time. Not that it's all that dangerous for us at the moment. Again, we've dealt with some pretty damn frustrating crap from the random encounters just to get this far into the game. Not that they're absolute pushovers this far in, they can take a good amount of damage and throw some harsh punches right back at us. Still, after the absolute nightmare of back-to-back dungeons where there were some enemies that spawned fresh monsters, if struck by anything less than a lethal blow, or struck by something other than a Dark Knight's blade, this is almost relaxing in comparison. Place your bets. How long until I'm gonna have to return to our airship to get some more high potions as we keep pushing forward? Ah well, at least we're gaining some reasonable upgrades to our equipment this far in, though that does raise the question of when we're going to gain the best possible weapons. Are they gonna be in this dungeon, or were they in some corner of some other dungeon that I somehow didn't manage to find? Huh. Either that Iron Claw didn't have that much health, or we managed to turn it to stone but couldn't tell, since petrifying something turns it gray. And that thing started off as the color gray. Not that we've been seeing the greater demons turning to stone at all. Apparently they are completely immune to that status effect. Like, hell, I'm pretty sure just about everything might be immune this far in. Well, if nothing else, the fact that I'm taking my time to get through the floor by trying to find all the chests to open is a good way for us to keep leveling up and prepare for the final boss. Ugh. Bloody hell, this single floor is absolutely massive. I don't think any other floor in the game is this big. I'm sorry, Thanatos? As in the Greek concept of death itself? That's a random encounter in here? And just why is it that the concept of death looks like some Amazon woman who's carrying around her own severed head while on horseback? And great, now I'm thinking of the Legend of Sleepy Hollow. I know, the idea of a headless horseman has existed for longer than the United States of America has and all that, but hey, Sleepy Hollow was the first story I'd ever seen that had something like that. Well, he certainly didn't take advantage of the fact that he came at us from behind there. Hell, he didn't even summon anyone to back him up. I wonder why. Of course, a better question is probably why I haven't been fast-forwarding all that much in this dungeon, even though I'm pretty damn eager to leave this entire game behind, because, yeah, this is gonna take a while. Well, that's a new one, at least for this game. I'm kinda surprised we didn't see any undead dragons on our way to Bahamut, considering how dragon-heavy that dungeon was. Well, this is certainly gonna burn through some more high potions, that's for sure. I just wish I could muster any real emotion when we see one of those iron claw things. They're definitely supposed to come across as dangerous, but they just don't look it to me. They feel like they're trying to go for just too many things at once, visually speaking. I'm just getting this impression of a weird Muppet with humanoid and muscular legs, 8 spider limbs from its torso, and a kind of derpy, very far from menacing look on its face. Sure, it's not the worst lurking monster of the game, but it really just highlights that the monster designs in this one feel like they just plain aren't that great. They just slapped various ideas together, did some visual edits to some things from the previous Final Fantasy games, and hoped that was all that was really what they needed to do. Again, it's pretty hilarious to me that even though Final Fantasy 2 and 3 did some pretty innovative stuff, I feel like the only actually good game from the original 3 games was, well, the absolute first game of the franchise. It almost makes me wonder why they bothered to try to grow the series from there, considering they already had a damn good formula from the start. But as we saw with Final Fantasy IV, that need to innovate and grow the series from beyond its initial humble beginnings took the franchise in some very interesting directions. Sure, it's gonna take us a while to make it to the golden age of this franchise, but definitely looking forward to it. Okay, that's a massive upgrade from the other staves Azul was carrying there. Apparently, the other weapon we gained there can only be equipped by a knight. Huh, and it's another weapon that causes petrification. But this sword isn't called anything like Excalibur, so it's probably not the absolute best weapon that a knight can hold. Still, the boost in power more than makes up for the slight drop in defense and accuracy. Not that striking with those new weapons seems to be all that much more noticeably more impactful than what we came with before. Maybe that was just asking for too much. Still, we can afford to be pretty mindless when taking the enemies in this dungeon out. At most, I just have to occasionally fix our formation if we're attacked from behind with no warning, and spend various potions after the battle. Not that there's any real warning for any of the random encounters we've dealt with in this game, the original game, or Final Fantasy IV. Hell, I don't think we're gonna get any real warnings for fights in this series until we finally make it to Final Fantasy XII. It probably says something that I just can't feel all that worried about us taking a hit that's 700 points strong in this dungeon. I mean, we have just gotten strong enough that it's annoying, but not anything to really worry about. Sure, we can't afford to take that kind of hit several times in a row, but still, it's honestly kind of funny to me to think about the fact that even a mage character from any Final Fantasy game around level 40 can take more of a beating than a god-defying protagonist from something like Shin Megami Tensei and its spin-offs. Hell, in general, it feels like Final Fantasy makes the health bars of the protagonists a lot larger than other Japanese role-player games generally do. And of course, the health bars for the hostiles we fight against tend to get pretty damn bloated as well. Not that we can actually see the maximum numbers as we fight. And at least it's in comparison to role-player games like Wild Arms, Suikoden, and Shin Megami Tensei. Yet, somehow the growth and progression still feels reasonable enough to me. Especially compared to how things felt in Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3. The damage numbers being thrown around, even at level 1 of that game, felt downright obscene. And I just outright stopped paying attention to the damage numbers in that game, or our own health, long before we even got to the middle of it. In this game, we're dealing with the likes of Thanatos as a late-game random encounter. But if Thanatos in this game had to fight against a single Outrider from the final mission of Ultimate Alliance 3, then I'm damn sure the nameless Outrider would win, just from sheer durability and sheer offensive hits. I know there's literally no point in comparing the fighting in a Western-made action role-player game like Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 with the turn-based fighting in a classic Japanese-made role-player game like Final Fantasy 3. Still, the thought kinda jumped into my head. No harm in letting the thought out here, since there's really not that much else to say at the moment. Well, nothing other than the awkward fact that I've spent 33 high potions just to walk through the first 2 floors of this dungeon. And the fact that I'm very much going to be abusing the Pixel Remaster's quick save ability around here far more than anywhere else in the entire Pixel Remastered collection. Dear God, this game is definitely proving to be a lot more of a pain in the ass than I could have possibly anticipated. Still, it's overall pretty fun, and I suppose that's all you really need in the end. As a side note, the 3rd floor seems mercifully small in comparison to the other 2.